possible further flooding on its way. Now, that cloud and rain continues to push its way eastwards. Many places across Wales and southern parts of England seeing outbreaks of rain to start Monday morning, but generally a mild start with temperatures around 10 or 11 degrees. So a damp start to the new working week with heavy spells of rain, especially across northern parts of Wales into the Midlands and towards the east of East Anglia as well. Towards the south, it will turn a little bit drier. We may see some brightness, and further towards the north of Scotland, we may hold on to a bit of sunshine, but otherwise still staying breezy in the south, highs of 17 degrees.
That warm feeling inside. From Box.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 29th of September, and this is the weekend on GB News. Now, big politics weekend, sorry about that and everything. The Tory conference is underway, but the only question on anyone's lips is... No, I'm not going to say that, although I'm tempted. Who will win the leadership race? Earlier on, our GB News, our deputy political editor spoke to all 4 candidates. We'll be getting his view live from Birmingham in the next few minutes. And then on the other side of the coin, Rosie Duffield has spectacularly quit the Labour Party, launching a scathing attack on Keir Starmer, saying hypocrisy, sleaze, nepotism and greed are rife within the inner circle. Is she right, though? And how damaging could her resignation be to the Prime Minister? And on Planet Showbiz, there you can see him, Phillip Schofield returns to our screens tomorrow night. He's blamed homophobia for the scandal that ended his TV career, saying he would have received a pat on the back had the affair been with a much younger woman. Will you be tuning in for that one? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is indeed The Weekend. But I wouldn't be sitting here rabbiting away if it wasn't for you lot out there. And this show is nothing without you and your views. It's my favourite bit is talking to you all out there, letting me know what you think about the stories we're discussing. It's the weekend, anything we're going to talk about, basically. It's really simple to get involved with the show as well. All you do is visit gbnews.com/yoursay and joining what we're talking about. Keeping me company on today's show, I'm absolutely thrilled to say, is broadcaster JJ Anisobi and former Conservative advisor Charlie Rowley. Thank you very much. 2 young men to play with. Hey, lucky me. But before we get stuck into today's stories, here's the news with another young man in the studio, spoiled for choice, Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie in the GB newsroom. The Conservative Party conference begins in Birmingham today as the party chair, Michael Winstanley, is expected to say he is profoundly sorry for the loss at the general election. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his wife Akshata Murthy arrived last night but is expected to leave later on today. It will be his last conference as the leader. Well, earlier on today on GB News, our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, spoke to all of the Tory leadership candidates. He quizzed Robert Jenrick on whether he could support any policy that the Labour government could table.
I've already said that the NHS needs reform. And if Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer come forward with genuine reforms in the national interest that improve productivity, so that we actually talk about outputs, not just inputs, I would support them.
When pressed on why the Conservatives suffered such a historic loss at the general election, leadership candidate James Cleverly had this to say.
You've got to recognise that the British people kicked us out for a reason. And they kicked us out because of the gulf between what we said and what we did. So we need to promise less but deliver on everything we promise.
Tom Tugendhat asked why MPs should back him, considering he's the only candidate left in the race who hasn't held a full cabinet position.
I'm not going to hold against them their lack of experience on the front line in combat. I'm not going to hold against them their lack of experience in serious operational theatres like Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm not going to hold against them their record of the past few years. My job is to set forward my record and demonstrate what I can offer this country.
And last, but certainly not least, he asked Kemi Badenoch if she thought if the leadership contest had been a clean race.
I think that whenever people do things that are, about other candidates, people can see. So I'm just focused on my own campaign. It's for the party authorities to decide. I'm very happy to correct the record, but it shows that he's not actually reading or listening to what I'm saying.
David Lammy has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut. The Foreign Secretary says they agreed that an immediate ceasefire is required to bring an end to the bloodshed. It comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in an airstrike in southern Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel settled the score with Nasrallah's death. A UK-led partnership has delivered a major blow to international people smuggling gangs after hundreds of small boats and engines were seized on the Bulgarian border with Turkey. The border crossing in southern Bulgaria is one of the key routes used by organised crime gangs to smuggle small boat-related equipment into Europe and up to northern parts of France. Over the past 12 months, officers from the UK's National Crime Agency have worked in Bulgaria, sharing intelligence and mounting joint operations to target the people smuggling supply chain. The Canterbury MP, Rosie Duffield, has resigned from the Labour whip, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy and pursuing cruel and unnecessary policies. In a resignation letter, Ms Duffield attacked Sir Keir Starmer's decision to keep the two-child benefit cap and means test winter fuel payments, and commented his handling of the outcry over gifts given to him and other senior Labour figures. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, told GB News he's disappointed by the resignation.
Well, I think when you read Rosie's resignation letter, you can see that these are the frustrations and disagreements of somebody who's held them for quite a long time. There's no secret about that. I think Rosie's been quite disaffected with the Labour leader, with the Labour Party for quite a while. So I'm disappointed to see her go because I like Rosie and I think she's got a lot to offer politics. But ultimately, I'm not surprised.
Almost 10 million households have been warned they risk overpaying for their energy if they don't send meter readings to their supplier before a price rise takes effect on the 1st of October. The average household energy bill is set to increase by £149 a year from this Tuesday, as Ofgem increases its price cap. Phillip Schofield says the utter betrayal by his television colleagues has made him never want to be a daytime presenter ever again. The 62-year-old is set to appear on Channel 5's Castaway, marking his first TV appearance since leaving ITV in May of 2023, following an admission of an unwise but not illegal affair with a younger male colleague. And SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back 2 astronauts who have been stranded on the International Space Station.
3, 2, 1, ignition, full power, and liftoff.
The Dragon capsule, which has 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams, lifted off from Cape Canaveral last night. The pair were only meant to be in space for around 8 days, but after a fault was found in one of the return vehicles, the new Boeing Starliner, it was returned to Earth empty, just as a precaution, leaving them stranded in space for almost 4 months. The new team is hoping to bring them back in February of next year. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Lewis. We're so looking forward to the next half hour when you're back. OK, right, let's talk politics. It's the Tory party conference kicking off in Birmingham as the leadership race heats up. It's a vital opportunity for remaining candidates, all 4 of them, competing to take over from Rishi Sunak to offer their pitches and prove their worth to Tory party members. Kind of a beauty contest, if you like. Joining me now is our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who this morning spoke to all 4 candidates. Hello, Tom. Thank you for joining us. OK, you've had a good chat with all 4 of them. Now, you've actually sat opposite them face-to-face and spoken to them. They can say all they like when they're, giving interviews in the papers, etc. What was it like sitting talking to them? What was your impression of them?
Well, it's such a tight race, and that is the mood music that is covering this conference, really. You've got enormous banners of the 4 remaining candidates' faces lining the hall just to my left here in the Birmingham ICC. Really quite Orwellian, actually, just seeing their enormous faces stare down at you as you walk into this venue. But then to see them in the flesh, to talk through their policies, very, very interesting. You can see how this race is quite so tight, not just because they are strong candidates all in their own ways, but also because there are only 121 Conservative MPs left in the House of Commons. It's the lowest number of Conservative MPs there has been in the party's history. So really, it's hard for one candidate to build up a huge broad side of members of Parliament when there really aren't that many to choose from. But it's interesting. I also spoke to Pat McFadden. Now, he's the de facto Deputy Prime Minister in this government, some people say. And one of the reasons why Tory leadership candidates feel like this is everything to play for and that the fight is so important is because of the scandal that the Labour Party is mired in, the questions about gifts and lavish lifestyles. So I put that question to Pat McFadden.
No, that was in order to comply with the rules, because they changed the rules and said you could no longer have a mortgage subsidised by the taxpayer, but you had to rent. And so I complied with the rules. It's very important to comply with the
That was Pat McFadden, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, saying that it was complying with the rules, which is true, to rent out the house he owned in his constituency, but also rent a house next door and charge that to the taxpayer. All within the rules, of course, but you can see why people are raising an eyebrow or two about that practice that occurred from 2012 through to 2017. It brings up all of these questions of gifts, of expenses, of an us versus them sort of idea of how the government is going about its business. For example, the cuts to winter fuel and then the massive lavish gifts to government ministers. Big questions to be raised there. But there were other questions, of course. I spoke to James Cleverly, who is currently in joint third place in this race, about a successor of his. Now, of course, James Cleverly was Foreign Secretary for a time under the last government. He was, in fact, the first African origin Foreign Secretary that this government, that the United Kingdom has ever had. And yet he told me when he visited the UN and spoke at the UN Security Council, he didn't play on his identity in the way that he says that the current Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is.
David, isn't it? I cannot believe the UK Foreign Secretary went to the United Nations in a debate about Ukraine and somehow managed to make it about himself. The Labour Party, I think, are really bruised by the fact that it was the Conservatives who had the first, second and third female Prime Minister, the first Asian Prime Minister, the first black Foreign Secretary, the first Muslim Home Secretary. They hate it because they like that tokenistic identity politics. We just get on with the job. That's all I've ever done. David is desperately trying to make it about identity politics. When I was Foreign Secretary, I made it about UK's national interest on the world stage. That's the difference between saying stuff.
That's the really interesting point about this leadership contest compared to previous leadership contests. They have tried to keep what's known as blue on blue to a minimum. All of these contenders trying to use all their sound bites to attack the Labour Party, to attack their Labour counterparts and the agenda of this new government, rather than each other. Why is that? Well, there's something called a yellow card system in play in this leadership contest, where if a candidate is seen to be attacking a fellow Conservative too viciously, well, the people convening this election can hold up a yellow card and shame that candidate. I put that question to Kemi Badenoch, who seemed to have a few words to say about Robert Jenrick. There is a yellow card system in this race where if candidates or camps directly brief against other candidates, they're told to stop. Do you think this has been a clean race?
I think it has been very interesting where some candidates have set out their stall and other candidates are talking about everybody else. I mean, it was really interesting on the Laura Koonsberg show today. Rob Jenrick was on just before me, and he said two things about me that weren't true. One, that I've said that numbers don't matter. Numbers do matter. When it comes to immigration. I said so in an op-ed, and that I'm opposed to a cap. I'm not opposed to a cap. I just think that you can have a cap and the wrong people still come in. I want us to talk about who is coming into our country.
Do you think that Robert Jenrick's campaign should have a yellow card put against him for those comments this morning?
Do you know what? I think that whenever people do things that are, about other candidates, people can see. So I'm just focused on my own campaign. It's for the party authorities to decide. I'm very happy to correct the record, but it shows that he's not actually reading or listening to what I'm saying.
Oh, did that sound like a little bit of blue on blue to you? I detected the vaguest hint of a tint of blue on blue there. That was, of course, me talking to Kemi Badenoch and all of the other contenders in this race a little bit earlier in our temporary studio here in Birmingham. But Dawn, a lot to come this week. All of those candidates will be making their pitch to party members in sequential speeches later in the week.
Tom, just one very quick question. Yeah, all very well. You've spoken to all four and they've all set their pitches out, etc., etc. The new leader is going to be chosen on November the 2nd, which is after Labour have done this budget from hell they're all threatening us with. Surely it would make sense to have a new leader in place before that happens. Why do we have to wait so long?
That is exactly what a number of the contenders are now coming out and saying. Both Robert Jenrick and Tom Tugendhat have said that this should be a curtailed contest, that it should declare before the budget so the new leader can respond. That being said, we haven't heard that ardent sort of call from Kemi Badenoch or from James Cleverly yet, but they may well come around to that. I think I heard earlier today Kemi Badenoch say that she would rather it run the course because, of course, she's fallen behind Robert Jenrick recently in terms of the number of MPs and the bookies' odds, so perhaps she wants a longer race to try and catch up.
Brilliant. That's Tom Harwood there in Birmingham for us with the Conservative Party conference. OK, let's see what my panel make of this. A journalist and broadcaster, JJ Anisiobi, and former Conservative advisor, Charlie Reddy. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. And, yeah, I can't remember what your name was now, telling me off for making a joke about having two young men to play with. And if a boy said that, everyone would be upset. Well, look, it's called a sense of humour. It depends on the context in which you say it, and I'm not Phillip Schofield.
I'm just happy to be called young.
I was about to say that you're accepting that we're young, which is nice.
Stop getting offended on their behalf. There's way too much of that these days. They're not offended, right? OK. Oh, God.
That's the only reason I turned up.
And you also tell me to grow up. I'm not going to grow up. It's a trap. OK, I'm definitely not going there. Right, talking of growing up, in any case, we have more politicians talking more stuff. Charlie, you've worked with politicians talking stuff for quite a while. What do you make of what you've heard so far from the Conservatives?
Well, I think the first thing is that the one thing that's been missing within the Conservatives is that element of discipline. I mean, the party tore itself apart, different leaders chopping and changing ideas, different segments of the Conservative Party, different factions appearing. So it's good to actually see well, if this yellow card system, whether it's working or not, I don't know. But by and large, the candidates so far haven't been tearing lumps out of each other. So there is that sense of discipline when you think what's currently happening under the Labour government. The wheels seem to have come off even before I think they're already put on. So it's, you know, what you don't want to do is give the Labour government any more ammunition than what they've already got over the past few years under a previous Conservative government. So far, so good on the discipline side. I think when it comes to curtailing maybe the timing of the election, I think that's probably a legitimate claim. You know, the conference is this week. It ends on the 2nd of October. You know, I don't know why it takes then a whole other month for MPs who've got to be back in Parliament anyway to whittle it down to 2 and then to go to the membership. The members will be in Birmingham, or if they want to come to see the candidates, come down to Birmingham. So I don't know why it takes a bit longer. And I think we'd all like to see the leader of the party at the dispatch box taking on Labour's budget. But it might be an opportunity if Rishi isn't giving a speech, which he isn't at this conference, which I'm a bit disappointed about. Actually, I think it could have been.
Do you think he should? Do you think it's...
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it would have been a great opportunity for him because of obviously the disastrous election. Not all his fault, because it was a succession rather of issues that went wrong, and say the Tory party not being as united as it should have been. I think it would have been an opportunity to say to the country again, don't be fooled. You know, he's had time to reflect. I mean, obviously, I think he should apologise for the election. He was the leader at the time, but also to say, look, I'm bowing out. The party's all here in Birmingham now. You're going to pick a new leader at the end of the week. And just think about the economy. Think about what we actually did in terms of the economy. Let's regroup, regain our sort of our mojo,
message.
our positive message about our record. But see what's happening at Labour. See what the Labour government are doing. And I think he could have bowed out in quite a positive way, and he would have got a good applause from the members. There's no hate there, and he might have. Well, he's gone up in the polls anyway. So he might have gone even further.
I mean, you know, a lot of people are saying, "Oh my God, it's all the same." You know, whether they're Conservative or Labour, it's all the same. JJ, do you think people care who is the next leader of the Conservative Party?
If you're not a member of the Tory party, I don't think you do care.
Right.
There's no interest in it for the wider public. And the membership of the Tory party now is, I think, about 150,000, 170,000. It's a small number of people who are going to decide who's in charge of that party. It was William Hague who made that change and made it the law within the party that we're going to ask the members to decide who becomes leader. And I think they should revoke that and change it and let the MPs decide. But having said that, I do think all 4 people who are left in this race are strong politicians. I think any of them would make a good Tory leader and a good Prime Minister. The fact that Priti Patel, who served in Cabinet, was knocked out of the race already shows how strong the 4 people who are left are. And, I mean, Tom Tugendhat, I've met him several times. I think he would be a very good leader for now. But I've written speeches and advised for MPs about the last 4 or 5 years. I don't think whoever wins this competition, I don't think who wins the leadership now.
Beauty contest, let's call it that.
Whoever wins now will not be in power at the will not be the leader at the next election, I don't think. In 4.5 years, I think that's too long.
So it's kind of a stalking horse thing. We'll put someone in now to get us over this, and then just before the election we're going...
I think it would be better for Kemi Badenoch to not win now, but I think she's going to eventually become leader and then would have the best chance of becoming Prime Minister.
She's very popular, according to the bookies, who I checked this morning. She is 9-4 favourites. What do you make to that?
Well, she's a very strong candidate. I mean, and as JJ says, you know, she's obviously been talked about a long time. She stood at the last leadership election. She's got, you know, some very young MPs actually sort of backing her, who also could be part of the future. I think there's still a question mark hanging over Kemi, and I don't think it's unfair to say about, you know, what is her strengths can also be her weaknesses. So being very direct.
She's very outspoken, very direct.
And her view, and I don't disagree with it, is that that's what some of the country wants to hear. That's what, you know, the direction that politics needs to be now. You can't just have waffle. You need action, and you need tough talking, and you need to shake the system up. Now, of course, if you do that, you're obviously going to put some people out of joint, people that might, you know, be sensitive, or people that are used to more diplomatic politicians and the centre ground politics or other kind of politics. So she doesn't have that, or she won't endear those colleagues. And when it becomes the question for parliamentary colleagues to whittle it down to the final two, will she make that? Will she make that final cut? Remains to be seen.
Interesting. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we are... Darn it! Yeah, but you've got plenty of time. You're with me all afternoon. Sorry. But you've got plenty of time, JJ. We will be going back to that conference, and for all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to our website, gbnews.com. And, of course, let us know what you think. It's so important. gbnews.com/your say. Would Kemi be the right person for you? Let me know. In any case, I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News, and there is loads more coming up on today's packed show. On the other side of the coin, we have Rosie Duffield quitting the Labour Party, launching a scathing attack, and that's putting it politely, on the Prime Minister, citing the sleaze, nepotism and greed at the heart of the government. All of that and much more to come, and you do in a minute. This is GB News, Britain's newsroom. We'll see you soon.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Club Classique, previously known as Méthode Club Classique, is South Africa's answer to the famous French fizz.
They basically have to be made in South Africa and also by the traditional method. So it's exactly the same method as champagne, but is made in a different place. So they can't call it champagne because it's not made in Champagne, but it's very similar.
And on the other hand, in Prosecco, it all happens in a sort of great vat.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is why Prosecco tastes different from other sparkling wines.
Prosecco will taste much more fruity because you don't have the thing called lees aging. Insert the wine with brioche, biscuity, toasty flavours and aromas, which makes it much more complex.
Here we've got a thing called Journey's End.
Yes.
And would you like to tell us, I've said that people didn't want to splash out on champers. They might want to go the Cap Classique route.
Yes.
What would they be saving? How much might that cost in a shop?
So this one here will cost you about £17. So it is considerably, I guess, better value for money than champagne.
But I'd also comment that it's probably a good deal cheaper than English sparkling wine, which is interesting.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, this second one is called Kleiner Salzer.
It is, yes.
And you told me this is a little more expensive than the first one.
It is.
What price were we talking about here?
About 20.
About 20?
Yes.
Not vastly more.
No.
Are we going to taste £3 worth of improvement? Oh, and by the way, it went so beautifully with the cheese, just as you advised. Are South African sparkling wines, Cap Classique, are they pretty well available in English wine shops, British wine shops?
They are, yes. You can find them in all of the supermarkets. Growing back, and that's on offer at the moment, actually. That's £11.99 from Waitrose, which is exceptional value.
That is insane.
Yes, it is. And you can also, so I bought with me today, so this is a Pinot Noir only, so that's a rosé sparkling.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. My panel are getting very frisky here, discussing various rumours that are floating around, and they very nearly said them live on air. They didn't, thank God for that. In any case, we've done the Conservatives. Stop it giggling, you two. We've done the Conservatives, so let's have a look at Labour now, shall we? Rosie Duffield has spectacularly quit the Labour Party, branding their policies as cruel and unnecessary, and saying the sleaze and nepotism within the party is off the scale. In a scathing letter, she slammed the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, saying his staggering hypocrisy and lack of basic politics came crashing down on the party after 14 years in opposition. Well, you've already heard them giggling away in the background, and I can say that it's about a sense of humour. They're not offended before any of you start messaging me. gbnews.com/your say if you want to have another go, but I'm still not growing up. JJ Anisiobi and Charlie Rowley are still here with me. So, I mean, I sort of like kind of know Rosie a little bit, and I wasn't surprised about the letter she's put in, Charlie, but I was surprised at the strength of the language she used. It's pretty strong stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, 3.5 pages and...
For a resignation letter, it's pretty good going.
And you're absolutely right, it doesn't hold back.
No.
And it's clearly been something that's a long time coming, as you say, lots of, frustrations there. And not to even mention, obviously, one of the biggest issues, which I think she's been brilliant at, which is standing up for women's rights. Now, I'm all for, obviously, trans, and I'm for, very pro the LGBT community, but you have to accept that there is, the women's rights issue as well when it comes to things like safe spaces and sports and all the rest of it. Rosie Duffield has been a huge supporter of women in that regard and has been totally taken out to by her own party, it seems, at times. So, and the fact that she didn't mention that in their letter, because there's so much else to go on, such as taking away the winter fuel allowance, the two-child benefit cap, which she opposes, and just the way in which other colleagues were treated, the way in which Sir Keir Starmer doesn't appear to have engaged with parliamentary colleagues, as she said. Lots of things in there that has just clearly made her decide that actually she's better off working as an independent MP to serve her constituents.
Yeah, she's made the right decision, I think. It's no secret she's never been really a fan of Starmer.
Vice versa as well. He infamously, I mean, she was at the time the only MP, Labour MP down in Kent, and he completely ignored her.
Yeah.
When he talks about that, he doesn't even mention her by name.
No, true. But it's slightly good, if there's any silver lining for Starmer. It's that she hasn't defected to another party. She hasn't said, right, I'm joining Reform because Labour are terrible and everyone should follow me. She's gone independent, so she's kind of saying, yeah, Labour are terrible, but no one else is good enough either, which is a small bit of consolation for Starmer. But this looks terrible for Labour. They've already isolated our pensioners and anyone who cares about pensioners.
Yes,
yeah. And now with Rosie Duffield, it looks like they're going to be isolating women as well. So who are Labour representing?
Well,
donors, rich people.
And that's exactly the point. So one of the key bits of me that I was fascinated by the letter was that the lack of politics and the lack of political acumen that Starmer has. And that example on its own, I don't actually believe Sir Keir Starmer left Rosie Duffield out of that visit to Kent because he didn't like her. I just don't think he was aware that, oh, you know what, I'm going to Kent, maybe I should invite my colleagues along. I just don't think he's got any sense of political acumen, as you said, JP, because at the same time as taking away winter fuel allowance from the poorest in our society, he's been claiming, glasses, suits. I mean, it doesn't even make him prove it. It would. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame him if he was sort of doing a good job. If he was doing a good job, everyone would be saying, "Go on, Prime Minister, go to the football, go on, treat yourself." But the fact that he's been taking, and not just him, half the cabinet, all of these gifts and freebies at the same time, and not being able to answer the question or apologise to say, "I know that was bad optics. I'm sorry about that." There's no politics at all.
Rosie has been very, very personal about Keir in particular. She says in part of her letter, "Your promotion of those with no proven political skills and no previous parliamentary experience, but who happen to be related to those close to you or even to each other, is frankly embarrassing." I mean, she's very, very scathing.
Yeah, and she's right to be. You cannot say to people, like, for example, Boris Johnson, he had birthday cake. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't a surprise party. He was there. The whole Tories are full of, it's cronyism, it's corrupt, it's this, it's that. And then you get into power. After telling everyone you're going to be different, you get into power and it's like, oh, no, well, we can take money from rich donors. They can't, but we can, because it's different. My son can go and break laws and go and hang out in my mate's £1 million penthouse to revise for his GCSEs. It's his GCSEs. He only gets one chance. No, mate, you get resits. What about everyone else's kids who don't have rich donors to go and live in penthouses for? He has proven himself to be completely out of touch. That's why I call him Keith Starmer, not Keir. Because when you put Keir into your iPad, it comes up, it corrects it to Keith, right? I have no respect for our Prime Minister. I think he's the wrong man to be leading Labour. I think he's the wrong man to be leading this country.
Strong words. Do you think this will damage Keir Starmer even further than he already has been?
Yes. Sorry, Charlie. Go.
No, both of you.
I was just going to apologise to anyone out there called Keith. Don't be offended. It's a lovely name.
It is a lovely. I've got a cousin called Keith, actually.
Sorry, Keith.
Yeah, JJ, what's your problem with Keith, actually? Pretty Keithist. If you're called Keith, it's gbnews.com/your say.
The emails will be off the scale.
Anyways, we have to leave it there on Keith, but we will be coming back to this subject throughout the show as well. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GBNews, and there is loads more coming up. It's absolutely packed. Tory leadership candidate Kemi Badenoch has said that not all cultures are equally valid when it comes to immigration. What does she mean, and is she right? We're having that debate after the latest news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie. He's back.
Thank you very much, John. Good afternoon. It's just after 1:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. The Conservative Party conference begins in Birmingham today, as the conference chair, Michael Winstanley, is expected to say he's profoundly sorry for the loss at the general election. Leadership hopefuls James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch will be making their case to be the next leader of the party. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his wife Akshata Murthy arrived last night, but are expected to leave later on today. It will be his last conference as leader. David Lammy has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut. The Foreign Secretary says they agreed that an immediate ceasefire is required to bring an end to the bloodshed. It comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in an airstrike in southern Lebanon. Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel settled the score with Nasrallah's death. Canterbury MP Rosie Duffield has resigned the Labour whip, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy and pursuing cruel and unnecessary policies. In a resignation letter, Miss Duffield attacked Sir Keir Starmer's decision to keep the two-child benefits cap and means test the winter fuel payments, and condemned his handling of the outcry over the gifts given to him and other senior Labour figures. Almost 10 million households have been warned they risk overpaying for their energy if they don't send meter readings to their supplier before the price rise takes effect on the 1st of October. The average household energy bill is set to increase by £149 a year from this Tuesday, after Ofgem increased its price cap. And finally, SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back 2 astronauts who have been stranded on the International Space Station.
3, 2, 1, ignition, engine full power, and liftoff.
The Dragon capsule, which has 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, lifted off from Cape Canaveral last night. The pair were only meant to be in space for around 8 days, but after a fault was found on their return vehicle, the new Boeing Starliner, it returned to Earth empty, just as a precaution, leaving them stranded in space for 4 months. The new team will hope to bring them back of February of next year. Very good luck to them. Those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. We have an east-west split in the weather today, dry in the east, but turning increasingly unsettled from the west with heavy spells of rain. This is all to do with this area of low pressure, and there's a squeeze in the isobars as well, indicating some strong and gusty winds. But through the rest of the afternoon, especially across Scotland and eastern areas in England, staying dry with some hazy sunshine, but further towards the west, turning increasingly unsettled, heavy spells of rain moving through, and also some strong winds, and there is a wind warning in force for gusts up to 50 to 60 miles per hour. Otherwise, temperatures feeling pleasant in the sunshine further towards the north, highs of 15 degrees here. As we go through Sunday evening, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled once again from the west, but across parts of Scotland, staying largely dry with some early evening sunshine. Across Northern Ireland, that low pressure system still making an influence, so heavy spells of rain are going to be pushing through. And as we go through Sunday evening, that cloud and rain is going to continue to push its way eastwards, and we do also have a Met Office rain warning that comes into force across southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions, but also possible further flooding on its way. Now that cloud and rain continues to push its way eastwards, many places across Wales and southern parts of England seeing outbreaks of rain to start Monday morning, but generally a mild start with temperatures around 10 or 11 degrees. So a damp start to the new working week with heavy spells of rain, especially across northern parts of Wales into the Midlands and towards the east of East Anglia as well. Towards the south, it will turn a little bit drier. We may see some brightness, and further towards the north of Scotland, we may hold on to a bit of sunshine, but otherwise still staying breezy in the south, highs of 17 degrees.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, God, yeah. Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday out there. It is Sunday, isn't it? Yes, it is. Now, are all cultures equally valid? Conservative leadership candidate Kemi Badenoch doesn't think so. In an article for today's Sunday Telegraph, she called for a better integration strategy that emphasises British culture. She argues some customs may be at odds with British values and that it's naive to assume immigrants will automatically abandon ancestral ethnic hostilities at the border. Lots of long words there. Let's see what my panellists, JJ Anisiobi and Charlie Rowley, make of this one. Now, can I come to you first on this one, JJ? Because if you read that just bluntly, it could sound a little bit racist.
Yeah, it does sound... if you just take the headlines from it, that she is essentially targeting Muslims. That's how I...
The cultural difference.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my conclusion as well, because that is the biggest cultural difference.
Yeah, but if she had explained it more clearly, more precisely, and said, if you are in favour of women being second-class citizens, then you are against odds with British values. If you are a fan of... if you endorse female genital mutilation, then you're not right for Britain. But her language was vague and clumsy, I think. And if she's saying that people who are against Israel don't hold British values and shouldn't be here, well, then she should be also saying she pledges to stop sending billions of pounds to Ukraine. For decades, Ukraine has been against Jewish people, against Romani communities, against black and brown people. It's not a culture or society that actually is perfect with ours, but we've been forced to take Ukrainian refugees. Our tax our tax money is going to paying towards a war that a lot of people in this country don't agree with. So she should also be then saying, cool, if you're Ukrainian, then you shouldn't be part of this British society either, because they are at odds with what we believe.
But this is the problem, though, isn't it, Charlie? It's like, you know, how do you enforce a policy that says, like, you know, your cultural value, because you can't just lump every Ukrainian under that, and you can't just lump every Muslim under the sort of your cultural values are different to ours. So how do you even test this policy out?
Yeah, and I think it's probably just missing, you know, a word sort of, you know, within cultures or within certain religions or within... It is not the culture or the religion or whatever she sort of... So there are obviously, you know, groups of people and, you know, to add to the examples that, you know, JJ was talking about, you can talk about, you know, honour killings, you can talk about forced marriages, you can talk about, you know, groups of parents, you know, turning outside schools in the UK, protesting about what their teachers, you know, which is in the national curriculum, might be teaching their kids because they don't want to hear about it, and, you know, teachers running into isolation and all the rest of it. So there are...
But we still have that teacher in Batley up in Yorkshire who's still in hiding.
Yes, yeah. And you can talk about, you know, the Rochdale grooming scandal, you know, and Rotherham sort of grooming gang. You know, where there are... Within certain religious groups or cultures of people, whether it's, you know, Muslims, but it's not all Muslims. Obviously, it's not all Pakistani men in this country. Of course it's not. But what I think is missing is... First of all, the ability to say we celebrate the diversity and we celebrate different cultures in the UK. That's what makes us one of the greatest countries in the world, because you can learn from other people. But we are all, you know, sign up to the British, you know, identity of, you know, diversity, equality, tolerance for each other. That's how we get on. But there's been an imbalance of, I wouldn't say over-celebrating that, but celebrating that, but being unable and therefore under-reporting when you see things that are going wrong in society. People don't want to call out, you know, a Rochdale grooming gang. You know, the police didn't pick it up, the local council didn't pick it up. Everybody sort of, you know, absconded when it came to actually, you know, saying, hold on, there's a problem within this society or there's a problem within this community because people have fear of being racist.
But, Charlie, then I would also say, what about British-born people who have values that I don't deem to be British? I'm a Catholic. I'm accepting of everyone, whatever your religion, accepting of it. There are Christians I know who think you can pray away the gay, and they think that, oh, if you're gay, that's wrong because it says so in the Bible. So what about those people? Is Kay Baden not going to say to British-born people who have beliefs that I don't agree with, that I don't think are British, that they should be sent to another country?
No, well, I mean, you wouldn't send them to another country, but you're right. You know, we have in this country, you know, in the terms of the rule of law, we have same-sex marriage now. That is the rule of law. Whether you've a particular religious faith, however strongly or not, you're entitled to your own view. If it is a view, as long as you're not preaching hate, as long as you're not doing anything that is obviously illegal. And therefore, but you know, it's about education in a lot of these areas. So, but I don't think if you are anti same-sex marriage, then of course that's not Britain, because we celebrate diversity and we celebrate the same-sex marriage in this country. So I think she should be calling that out as well as everything else. But we've got to be able to sort of, as a society, as a community, talk about these things, celebrate the diversity, but not be in fear of talking about cultures or religions or any other part of society where there are these systemic problems, because otherwise they go unchecked, they go unbalanced, and they keep happening.
Do you think, JJ, there is still a wariness? We certainly get it from a lot of viewers that they are frightened to talk about immigration and about how maybe there isn't as much integration within some communities as there should be, because they do worry about being called racist. So do you think there is still that big elephant in the room out there still?
100%. A lot of us are from major cities. I'm from near Birmingham, massively diverse area. I live in London now, of course. Crazy diversity in London. But there's plenty of areas where I would go to and I won't see any brown or black faces. And white people live in those areas who are not coming into contact with people of different cultures and different ethnicities and different religions may feel that if they say something, and even if they say something naively and say something wrong, then they're going to be labelled a racist. If someone says immigration's out of control, I can say that as a black person and people aren't going to say he's a racist. But if Charlie comes on and says immigration in this country is out of control, some people are going to instantly say Charlie's a racist, which he is, but no, I'm joking. I'm joking. Charlie Riley is not a racist.
No, it's not. There you go, Charlie.
But yeah, but definitely a fear of people being able to say what they believe without being labelled instantly. Yeah.
And do you find that frustrating, JJ, as a person of colour, that that you can say things that people like Charlie can't because of that label?
No, I love it. It's great for me. It's fantastic. For example, I can come on here and, as I've said, I don't think we should be funding the Ukraine-Russian war.
Yeah.
I think the Ukrainian society, of course, not every Ukrainian is racist, but there's a history over there of attacking synagogues, Jewish cemeteries, the Romani community. We saw trains when Russia first invaded Ukraine. We saw trains of people, and we saw black students trying to get on those trains to leave Ukraine, being pushed off the trains by white Ukrainians. We saw that. And yet I'm supposed to be sat in this country paying my taxes, happy that my money is going to a country where racism is being openly put on television. But I can come on TV and I can say that without fear of getting attacked for it. Perhaps other people may not be able to come on and say that kind of thing.
Charlie? As the infamous racist on the panel.
Yes. Racist Rowley.
Unfortunately, you can't answer that one back because we've got... Go on, quickly, go on, quick.
No, it's...
We'll come back to that one, shall we? But no, he's not. We are joking. It is still OK to have a sense of humour. I don't think that's been outlawed yet, but don't hold your breath. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GBNews, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. It's Planet Showbiz. Phillip Schofield has blamed homophobia for the scandal that ended his career, saying he would have received a pat on the back for having an affair with a much younger woman. We're discussing that and looking ahead to his TV comeback tomorrow night. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. See you soon. Don't go too far.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word because it's an ending. And it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in. But it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, OK, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
The king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I didn't hear that. Hello, you're there. Welcome welcome back. It's the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, serious boys. I still got JJ and Charlie with me, and they're getting like a house on fire. They really do love one another, OK? Charlie isn't racist. That's just just in case. OK. Right, I'm just being nagged now to get a move on. Former TV presenter Phillip Schofield claims he would have been treated differently if his affair had been with a younger woman. He argues the difference is heterosexual, insisting that he would have got a pat on the back for an affair with a younger woman. This comes as Phillip Schofield makes his TV comeback tomorrow night on Channel 5 programme Castaway. Joining me now is showbiz supremo, the wonderful, the gorgeous Steph Tecchi. Steph, thank you very much for joining. So the plot thickens with Mr Schofield, doesn't it? So now, bloke in 50s having a relationship with someone that works for him who is 18 and female, that's fine. That's no defence, is it?
What catty remarks, Dawn. Literally, Phillip is bringing out the claws out for this. When Phillip Schofield came out in 2020, he had the full support of ITV, Holly Willoughby, who was by his side, as she read out his statement about him deciding that he was gay after 27 years of marriage to his wife, Stephanie. So ITV have been nothing but supportive. And for him to now go down this route, it's quite distasteful, to be honest, because I think actually, Dawn, if he did have an affair with a woman who was 17 or 18, actually it would have been a much bigger scandal. It seems that Phillip Schofield clearly has a chip on his shoulder against ITV, and because he's now got this 3-part documentary, he has as much time to air all of his views without ITV being able to come back and actually say this is actually what happened.
Do you think, though, Stephanie, there is an element of homophobia in the way Phillip Schofield has been treated?
Not in the slightest, Dawn. Obviously, that is from Phillip's perspective. But as I said, that, you know, for him to actually use this morning as a platform to say that he was gay actually shows he actually had the support of his bosses, and the viewers as well. But where has changed is this inappropriate affair that he had with a younger male runner, which he himself has said, fair enough, it wasn't illegal, but it's inappropriate. And that's what he has to deal with, the criticism from both viewers and also his employers.
Talking of his employers, there's a piece in the Sun on Sunday today, Stephanie, which I'm sure you've seen. Phillip Schofield, I'm not going to use the language he uses, but he names 3 people who he blames for his downfall, overlooking the fact he might have had something to do with it himself. He doesn't name them, but the Sun have taken a guess at Holly Willoughby, Martin Frizzell, who's the executive producer at This Morning, and Dame Carolyn McCall, who's the ITV chief executive. What do you make to this one?
You know what, Dawn, he doesn't need to name names because it's quite evident. We can put the 2 and 2 together. He talks about, you know, jumping the queue at the Queen's funeral. We know who was involved with that. He says he didn't actually quit ITV. He was pushed. He was sacked. So it's quite easy for members of the public to put it all together. And he's not actually doing anything to protect a good image of his former employees. Or, you know, people have always thought, have Phil and Holly became friends again post his exile from This Morning, and clearly it's not. You know, he talks about that infamous scene where Holly was talking to viewers and said, "Are you okay?"
Stephanie, thank you very much. We've got to leave it there, unfortunately. Thanks for joining us. Right, OK, let's go and find out what the weather's like. It's the weekend, and we really do know. Here's Catherine Chalk with all the details for you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. We have an east-west split in the weather today, dry in the east, but turning increasingly unsettled from the west with heavy spells of rain. This is all to do with this area of low pressure, and there's a squeeze in the isobars as well, indicating some strong and gusty winds. But through the rest of the afternoon, especially across Scotland and eastern areas in England, staying dry with some hazy sunshine, but further towards the west, turning increasingly unsettled, heavy spells of rain moving through, and also some strong winds, and there is a wind warning in force for gusts up to 50 to 60 miles per hour. Otherwise, temperatures feeling pleasant in the sunshine further towards the north, highs of 15 degrees here. As we go through Sunday evening, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled once again from the west, but across parts of Scotland, staying largely dry with some early evening sunshine. Across Northern Ireland, that low pressure system still making an influence, so heavy spells of rain are going to be pushing through. And as we go through Sunday evening, that cloud and rain is going to continue to push its way eastwards, and we do also have a Met Office rain warning that comes into force across southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions, but also possible further flooding on its way. Now, that cloud and rain continues to push its way eastwards. Many places across Wales and southern parts of England seeing outbreaks of rain to start Monday morning, but generally a mild start with temperatures around 10 or 11 degrees. So a damp start to the new working week with heavy spells of rain, especially across northern parts of Wales into the Midlands and towards the east of East Anglia as well. Towards the south, it will turn a little bit drier. We may see some brightness, and further towards the north of Scotland, we may hold on to a bit of sunshine, but otherwise still staying breezy in the south, highs of 17 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still...
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 29th of September. I know, how do we get to the last day of September already? What is happening? This is the weekend on GB News, and I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday afternoon out there. Now, the Tory conference is underway, but the only question on anyone's lips is, who will win the leadership race? Earlier on GB News, we heard from all four candidates. We were getting the latest from Birmingham. And on the other side of the political coin, Rosie Duffield has spectacularly quit the Labour Party, launching a scathing attack on Keir Starmer, saying hypocrisy, sleaze, nepotism and greed are rife within the inner circle. Is she right, though? And how damaging could her resignation be to the Prime Minister? And Boris Johnson has revealed some of the words of wisdom given to him by the late Queen as he resigned as Prime Minister. This is one of the latest excerpts from the former PM's highly anticipated memoir. But will you be buying a copy, and should he talk about what the Queen said to him? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. But this show is nothing without you and your views, and please do keep them coming in. I know I promised to read as many out as I can, and I will. It's just been such a busy packed show, and we've got such a brilliant panel, but I haven't had time. But yeah, I've got some questions you want to ask both of the lads here with me as well. Sorry, young men. I'm sorry, I'm getting all confused about what I can call them now. Only case. So let me know your thoughts on what we're talking about, or insult me if you want, I don't care. gbnews.com/your say. It's very simple. Get involved in that conversation. Keeping me company, as you've already heard giggling in the background, they do a lot of giggling, which is very good, is journalist and broadcaster JJ Anisiobi and former Conservative advisor Charlie Rowley, who they're just cracking me up, honestly. But before we get stuck into today's stories, it's drumroll please, the news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie in the GB newsroom. The Conservative Party conference begins in Birmingham today as conference chair Michael Winstanley is expected to say he's profoundly sorry for the loss at the general election. The former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and his wife Akshata Murthy arrived last night, but is expected to leave later on today. It will be his last conference as leader. Well, earlier on GB News today, our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, spoke to all of the Tory leadership candidates. He quizzed Robert Jenrick on whether he could support any policy that the Labour government could table.
I've already said that the NHS needs reform. And if Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer come forward with genuine reforms in the national interest that improve productivity so that we actually talk about outputs, not just inputs, I would support them.
When pressed on why the Conservatives suffered such a historic loss at the general election, leadership candidate James Cleverly had this to say.
You've got to recognise that the British people kicked us out for a reason. And they kicked us out because of the gulf between what we said and what we did. So we need to promise less but deliver on everything we promise.
Tom Tugendhat was asked why MPs should back him, considering he's the only candidate left in the race who hasn't held a full cabinet position.
I'm not going to hold against them their lack of experience on the front line in combat. I'm not going to hold against them their lack of experience in serious operational theatres like Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm not going to hold against them their record of the past few years. My job is to set forward my record and demonstrate what I can offer this country.
And last but not least, Kemi Badenoch was asked if she thought the leadership contest had been a clean race.
I think that whenever people do things that are, about other candidates, people can see. So I'm just focused on my own campaign. It's for the party authorities to decide. I'm very happy to correct the record, but it shows that he's not actually reading or listening to what I'm saying.
In other news, David Lammy has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli strikes in Beirut. The Foreign Secretary says they agreed that an immediate ceasefire is required to bring an end to the bloodshed. It comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader Hassan Nasrallah was killed in an airstrike in southern Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel settled the score with Nasrallah's death. Meanwhile, Canterbury MP Rosie Duffield has resigned the Labour whip, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy and pursuing cruel and unnecessary policies. In a resignation letter, Miss Duffield attacked Sir Keir Starmer's decision to keep the two-child benefit cap and means test winter fuel payments and condemned his handling of the outcry over gifts given to him and other senior Labour figures. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, told GB News he was disappointed by the resignation.
Well, I think when you read Rosie's resignation letter, you can see that these are the frustrations and disagreements of somebody who's held them for quite a long time. There's no secret about that. I think Rosie's been quite disaffected with the Labour leader, with the Labour Party for quite a while. So I'm disappointed to see her go because I like Rosie and I think she's got a lot to offer politics. But ultimately, I'm not surprised.
Almost 10 million households have been warned they risk overpaying for their energy if they don't send meter readings to their supplier before the price rise takes effect on the 1st of October. The average household energy bill is set to increase by £149 a year from this Tuesday, as Ofgem increases its price cap. Phillip Schofield says the utter betrayal by his television colleagues has made him never want to be a daytime presenter ever again. The 62-year-old is set to appear on Channel 5's Castaway, marking his first TV appearance since leaving ITV in May of 2023, following an admission of an unwise but not illegal affair with a younger male colleague. And finally, SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back 2 astronauts who have been stranded on the International Space Station.
3, 2, 1, ignition, full power, and liftoff.
The Dragon capsule, which has 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, lifted off from Cape Canaveral last night. The pair were only meant to be in space for around 8 days, but after a fault was found on their return vehicle, the new Boeing Starliner, it returned to Earth empty as a small precaution, leaving them stranded in space for almost 8 months. The new team hope to bring them back in February of next year. Well, a very good luck to all of them. Those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you very much, Lewis. Right, the Tory party conference is underway in Birmingham as the leadership race heats up. It's a vital opportunity for the remaining candidates competing to take over from Rishi Sunak to offer their pitches and prove their worth to Tory party members. Right, OK, the highlight of my show is talking to Christopher Hope, who is live in Birmingham for us. Mr Hope, how the devil are you up there?
All good, Dawn. Yeah, welcome to Birmingham. Another week, another party conference. This time it's the Tory conference. You saw there on your screen there, Rishi Sunak arriving here with Akshata Murty, his wife. Of course, she's the current Tory leader, being greeted by Richard Fuller, who's the party chairman. But as of about tonight, Mr Sunak is leaving this conference and leaving it wide open to the 4 candidates who want to replace him as leader. So far we've heard from all 4 on Camilla Tominey's show this morning, presented by my colleague Tom Harwood, all with interesting things to say. I was struck by James Cleverly. He had a go about David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. Here's what he had to say.
David, isn't it? I cannot believe the UK Foreign Secretary went to the United Nations in a debate about Ukraine and somehow managed to make it about himself. The Labour Party, I think, are really bruised by the fact that it was the Conservatives who had the first, second and third female Prime Minister, the first Asian Prime Minister, the first black Foreign Secretary, the first Muslim Home Secretary. They hate it because they like that tokenistic identity politics. We just get on with the job. That's all I've ever done. David is desperately trying to make it about identity politics. When I was Foreign Secretary, I made it about UK's national interest on the world stage. That's the difference between saying stuff.
That's James Cleverly there. Of course, he's standing to be leader. Kemi Badenoch, Dawn, she's been on the programme today. She's talking about crackdown on free speech boundaries. She's had a go at other candidates. There's a so-called yellow card system, so you can't be rude about each other. Tom Tugendhat called Keir Starmer a clear socialist on our shows this morning. Robert Jenrick, he's said that if he had to back one Labour policy, it would be Wes Streeting's reforms of the NHS. You'll see him speaking on TV there just now. And earlier, the morning started so far here with Richard Fuller, the chairman, issuing, frankly, an overdue apology to Tory grassroots from the chairman of the party, saying that he was sorry that they gave Reform Party oxygen to get all those 4.1 million votes back at the election, many of whom were Conservatives. So you can watch all of those videos, all those interviews on the GB News website, on YouTube. They're all there, but it's been a busy morning so far, Dawn, here in Birmingham.
Christopher, the odds keep changing on who's favourite. I mean, when I checked this morning, it was Kemi Badenoch that was favourite, followed by Robert Jenrick. Is that sort of still the vibe up there, that Kemi is going to be the hot favourite, or is it one of the others now?
Well, I think in terms of the only numbers that count at the moment are MPs and who they support. Now, as things stand, Robert Jenrick is first on that. I think with numbers on my bookie, about I think 33 MPs backing him. Following on, you've got Kemi Badenoch, and then you've got Tom Tugendhat and James Cleverly towards the end. So, yeah, it's about getting to the final two. They're going to decide that next week, Tuesday, Wednesday. So by next Wednesday, next week, we'll know the final two to go to the members, and this whole week is about a beauty parade. I think Robert Jenrick arguably has hit the ground running the quickest. I mean, I was there at his launch at the end of July or very early August. Others weren't campaigning that hard through August, but right now it's the white heat of this campaign, and that's why you're seeing it so buzzy here. It's an odd conference. It's the first one in 15 years when this party has not been in power, so there's a battle of ideas being played out. We've got Robert Jenrick, for example, who's been quite clear about withdrawing from the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. The other three want to reform it, but not necessarily pull out. So there's lots of blue water appearing between different candidates. So, and the gamble, I think, for these candidates is, are they appealing to MPs who are on balance a bit more moderate than the grassroots, who are a bit more to the right? So how you pitch that message is quite crucial over the next few days.
Chris, just very quickly, let's go to the red water that's currently spreading with Rosie Duffield attacking her boss, Keir Starmer. Absolutely, well, in very, very strong words indeed. She's resigned. How damaging is that to the Labour Party?
Well, I think it is damaging, very damaging. I think she's a Labour MP of some note. She's been held, I think, Canterbury since 2017. She ran through all the Corbyn years. She was this kind of outlier for where the Labour Party flooded in July. And the language there, you know, she's quit over the sleaze, as she calls it in a party, the apparent avarice or greed, she means there, amongst all the freebies gathered by senior people in the party, including Sir Keir Starmer. She's ashamed by the revelations. She wonders why this party can gather so much wealth around it and yet not find the money to lift the two-child welfare cap. She finds that inexplicable. It's been Pat McFadden, he's the senior minister in the Cabinet Office. He's knocked it back, saying that, frankly, ministers turn up every day to their duty, he says. They want to grow the economy and offer more opportunity to Britons. And so they're trying to put that one back in its box. But I think it is damaging. We'll see just how damaging next week. I would say, had Rosie Duffield resigned a week ago, on the eve of the Labour conference in Liverpool, it would have been even more damaging. So she's given the party a break by doing it today.
Brilliant. That's political editor Christopher Hope up at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. Thank you very much, Christopher. OK, well, I mean, you know, the question is, does anyone care? I mean, you've got the beauty contest, the four contenders, you know, not tearing each other apart. They've agreed not to do that. They're playing nice. Shame they didn't do it before, eh? It's like, but do you care? gbnews.com/your say. Find out now whether our panel care. We have JJ Anisiobi and Charlie Rowley with me. Charlie, you've worked in politics. I mean, you know what politicians are like. I mean, do you think people care who leads the Conservative Party next?
I think they do, yes, and I think they should. What's so funny about that? I think that's true. Because I think politics is so volatile at the minute, as it has been for some time, and that's, OK, the causes of that have been under a Conservative government. There's no getting away from that. You've seen the rise of reform, but there's not much else there in terms of reform. And, you know, Ed Davey, I mean, who's he? I mean, well, you know, we don't see him any, you know...
Even Mrs Davey queries it sometimes.
Well, yeah. And we don't see him unless he's in a wetsuit these days. And I don't think nobody's there for...
You had to mention the wetsuit. Oh!
It's down for that. It's tea time. And so I think when you've got then what's happening with the Labour government, the wheels seem to have come off, as I said before, where they're not... You know, anything can happen. And I think it does matter, therefore, if you have a new leader of the Conservative Party who can actually go to the country and say, look, we've made mistakes in the past, but this is the real vision. This is someone who is absolutely determined to build the homes that we need in this country, to actually get on top of the migration crisis, who can say, look, we've got to work cross-party, you know, when it comes to reform of the NHS, if Labour can't do it. Then actually the public might think, all right, well, I might not have a choice. I mean, a lot of people stayed at home at the last election, don't forget. They didn't come out in their droves for the Labour Party. So people are sitting on their hands, maybe waiting to see who the next Conservative leader is, and they might vote for them at the next election.
I'd like to see is a Tory leader leading a Tory party that is actually a Tory party. I want to see Labour Party being an actual Labour Party. George Galloway was completely right, in my opinion, that Sunak and Starmer are two cheeks of the same buttock, I think buttocks he said. I'm using buttocks instead of Derriere or whatever. So I think he's completely right in that. I do hope that whoever gets to be in charge of the Tories can bring back a proper Conservative party. Because at the moment, all I see with Labour is diet Tories, and the Tories haven't been the Tories for a good while.
It's interesting, John just messaged gbnews.com/your-say to get involved, by the way. John has just said, I don't care who leads the Conservatives. I gave them my vote for 14 years and betrayed it every single time, even with Brexit. So I hope reform puts an end to it in the next election. Charlie, how dangerous are reform to the Conservatives still?
They are dangerous because a lot of Tory votes went to reform, it split the vote, and that's why the Tory numbers in terms of the MPs that it had absolutely plummeted. So, you know, reform came second in a number of those places that should have been Tory seats or would have been, you know, Tories coming second when they ended up coming third. So they are a credible threat. I mean, obviously, and look, Nigel Farage, whether you agree with him or not, he has been able to articulate some of the issues that this country faces. First of all, Brexit, and then now I've been talking tough on immigration. I got into trouble last time, or your
not you, Charlie,
not
surely.
Me, not me. Not racist old me. And,
it's a joke, by the way. It's humour, not been banned yet.
I hope you haven't just tuned in.
I love
that faux pas. He's been around for a long time. He's been able to do, but reform needs to come out with credible policies now. I mean, he's been able to, as a great orator, be able to say what the country is feeling. But what are reform's policies? And this is why I got into trouble, because I said I don't hear much about what the policies are and will turn the boats back. I love that as a message. I think we'd all like to see that. But the reality is that won't happen. You will never get... I'm afraid you'll just get the Navy out there who will say, I'm sorry, Commander, I'm not going to do it. Because they'll be putting more lives at risk. So they need to come up with a bit more flesh on the bone other than we'll turn the boats back or we'll do this or you know. So we need to hear more from reform if they're really going to tackle the issues that we face. But they've been able to articulate some of the emotive issues.
They've got 80,000 paying members, reform. It's crazy. For such a young party, it's insane how quickly they've grown, how much support they've garnered. They don't need to... I don't think they need to come up with credible plans, to be honest. They're not the official opposition. They're just a party that want to make more money and have their voices heard. They can say whatever they want, whatever they think the people need to hear, they can say it, and that's enough for them now.
Do you think in 5 years' time, though, if they do get their act together and come up with some credible policies, as Charlie's just said, do you think there is a chance that they could seriously be challenging Labour and Conservatives? So you've just said it had been described as two cheeks of the same bottom.
I think there is, but not with Nigel Farage. I think Farage coming into the party and helping galvanise it and get support is fantastic. But to be an actual leader, a statesman of this country, I think that's got to be Richard Tice.
Oh, okay.
Farage will step aside and Tice can lead.
And would you vote for someone like Richard Tice leading?
Absolutely, I'd vote for Richard Tice. He's a friend of mine. I like...
You don't say. After that endorsement. Where are we going with this?
Tice is, if I'm open, Tice is a friend.
Other political leaders are available, by the way.
He's a former colleague. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I agree with some of his policies. And this is the reality. This is why you're saying at the moment politics is so divisive. The problem we have currently, I feel, and we've had for the past few years, is that I can't say publicly, I like Richard Tice and I'd vote for him and I agree with some of his policies and disagree with some of those things, without people saying, you're a turncoat, how can you be a Labour guy and say you like Richard Tice? There hasn't been a Labour leader ever that I've read the manifesto and said, I agree with every single point in his manifesto. That's just not the way that politics works, unfortunately. People need to be more honest about that. I thought Rishi Sunak was a good Prime Minister. I thought he had the wrong people around him. I thought Cameron was a great politician and a great leader. I thought Blair was also great. Keir Starmer, no. I liked Jeremy Corbyn's ideas. I don't think he would have been a good leader for the country, though. And with Richard Tice, I don't agree with everything that he says, but I agree with enough of what he says to think that he would be a better leader.
Interesting. Charlie, a lot of people have been asking you, as a former special advisor, SPAD?
Yes.
What do special advisors actually do?
Well, yes, I had the title of special advisor, but I didn't feel particularly special or gave any kind of advice, to be perfectly honest with you.
That's not one sorted, then.
Well, I think it's a great question because, you know, when you get into government, you've got a whole sort of team of civil servants, you've got whole departments full of people. If you're a minister or a cabinet minister, you have 2 or 3 people around you, maybe 4 or 5, who are your political people, your extension of the private office, effectively, because you're dealing with so many different competing priorities. So you've got your backbench MPs that all want a slice of you. They want you to, you know, help them with, I don't know, property here or planning application or whatever it is. So you've got to be, if you're the political special advisor, you'll have sometimes managing backbench colleagues to be a filter, a bit of a gatekeeper there. If you're a policy special advisor, you're someone that might knows the area of the policy or the department that you're in. But you know the politics of it, so you don't just have a civil service that say, Minister, you should do this. So you are a policy expert, but with the political edge. Or you can just be a media special advisor, so, you know, taking those inquiries from great shows like this. And if I was ever approached to say, can you get your minister on Dawn Neeson Weekend, I'll say, without a doubt, I'll say, you know, that's the first thing we're going to do. In fact, it'll be the only thing we'll do. We'll get you.
Thank you.
So you're doing all of those different kind of jobs to help the wheels.
So now you know what a SPAD does.
Do I have time to ask a question, Dawn, or are we going to break?
We've got to go to a break, unfortunately, but you're not going anywhere. You're still going to...
Deplatforming me every time.
You're so cancelled, OK. No, we are coming back. Honestly, we've got to take a quick break. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story and much more, go to our website, gbnews.com. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News. There's loads more coming up, including what JJ was just about to say. You'll have to wait. It might involve Boris Johnson, because he's revealed some words of wisdom given to him by the late Queen as he resigned as Prime Minister. Find out what the monarch said after this. See you soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Sleep Report 2024 is based on a comprehensive survey conducted all across the country, and the report found that over half the population, get this, falls short of the recommended 7+ hours of required sleep each night. And shockingly, 1 in 4 of us is getting 5 hours or less, and that includes you, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very bad at sleep. 4 or 5, I'd say.
That's
awful. A bit like
awful.
Maggie Thatcher. What would you get on average?
I'd say at least 6. 7 probably average.
That's probably not good. I think you probably need 8. Well, almost half of Brits rate their sleep quality as 5 out of 10 or lower.
Dr Manesh Shah and Dr Sita Shah joins us now to tell us all about the sleep and how Brits are struggling. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
First question is to you both. How many hours do you both get?
God, I think it varies. I try and hit that 7 hours of sleep.
Why are Brits so bad at getting sleep, especially in terms of hours? 4 or 5 hours for me, 6 hours for you. It's the same for everybody out there in the UK. We're just not going to bed early enough. Is it as simple as that? Or is it slightly more complicated?
Yeah, so I think the key is to establish a good routine. So waking up at the same time every day, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day, and being quite sort of rigid and strict with yourself when it comes to those timings.
And also, it's not just the length of, I get, say, 7 hours, it's the quality, isn't it? You've got different phases of sleep.
Yeah.
Just explain those. Is it, as far as I remember, REM, deep sleep? Just tell us about that.
Correct, yeah. So, essentially, there's 4 stages to sleep. So there's stage 1 and stage 2, which are your lighter stages of sleep. Then stage 3 is your deeper sleep. And then you've got the stage 4, which is your REM. Which is a rapid eye movement stage. And it's the stage 3 and the REM sleep which is really, really important for restorative and regenerative sleep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, there you are. You've got a nice cuppa in front of you now, or maybe a glass of wine. It's a Sunday lunchtime after all. This is The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, there is no point in bitterness, the words of Queen Elizabeth to former Prime Minister Boris Johnson as he was forced from office in 2022. He has revealed parts of their conversation in his upcoming memoir, due to be released on the 10th of October, in which he says the monarch was completely unimpaired by her illness, adding the world would be a much happier place if everyone could see as clearly as she did. Well, joining me now is royal commentator Caroline Aston to talk about what we've learned about the late Queen. And should Boris be revealing these things? In any case, I thought the etiquette was that you didn't talk about conversations you had with the late Majesty. What do you make of what you've read of Boris so far?
Well, bang on the money when it comes to privacy. These audiences between monarch and premier are not recorded, not written down, and not usually repeated. So, yes, a bit of a clangor there, perhaps. But having said that, if you analyse what was said, I think Her Majesty, right at the end of her life, was doing exactly what she did all through her long reign of 70 years. She spoke, but didn't reveal much, kept her cards close to her chest. And basically what he writes about is her unerring grasp on loyalty, service, duty, things, incidentally, that any good Prime Minister should keep to the front of their minds as well. I think he found it a moving encounter, and of course, 2 days after this, Her Majesty was no longer with us. And of course, I remember how the world reeled in its tracks at this sudden removal of that familiar figure. So I think Mr. Johnson was probably very struck, as many were, by the regality of this small, diminished figure. We could almost watch the Queen, couldn't we, during her last year, melting away before our eyes. And yet, right to the end, as Mr. Johnson says, and this I do agree with him sharing, she had that big white smile. She smiled through to the end, as is shown in those last photographs. But this is not groundbreaking information, and to be honest with you, I'm far more gripped by his account of this seeming planned commando raid of the Netherlands to snatch back vaccines that he thought were legally ours. It's an interesting memoir, and you know something, Dawn? The memoir reminds me of Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. You put your hand into it and you're really never quite sure what you're going to pull out of a Boris Johnson storybook.
This is absolutely true, and because the other royal link was the fact that he said that he tried to persuade Prince Harry to stay in this country, so Mexit didn't happen. Unfortunately, he was not very successful, because I think Harry and Meghan left the very next day.
That's absolutely right, and I understand that, yes, there was some kind of conversation, but perhaps not pitched quite as Mr. Johnson puts it in his memoirs. But then the man is a wordsmith. He writes, as you know, for the Daily Mail, and he uses such gloriously rich and sometimes impenetrable language that the Mail publishes a sort of dictionary corner for people who don't quite know what, for example, banjaxed means. It's all good for extending our vocabulary, don't you think?
You know, absolutely. I must admit, I had to use the dictionary corner extensively this morning. I mean, banjax was the only word I did understand. The rest of it was pretty confusing. Can I just, while I've got you on, Caroline, ask you a little bit about the other story about Harry and Meghan at the moment. The fact that they are separating their business interests, and people are reading that as an attempt maybe that Harry will be doing more solo work and maybe coming back to the UK. What do you make of that one?
Well, there's certainly been a divergence, hasn't there? And maybe that's necessary. I'm interested in what's going to happen with this much-vaunted polo programme
yes.
that Netflix are supposed to be putting out. And I'm sure Netflix was hoping for lots of footage of a sweat-glazed Prince Harry, you know, pounding around the polo field, mallet in hand. But it turns out to have far more footage of his great friend Nacho Figueres, a very handsome 47-year-old Argentinian polo player who speaks English in a wonderfully sexy, romantic, broken accent. But I think behind the scenes, yes, bit heating, isn't it? And behind the scenes, I think they're calling it the Nacho Show. Netflix, I think, wanted more bang for their buck. And don't forget that £80 million contract is up for renegotiation next year. So if there is some new branding going on, they'd better step on the gas. And also, incidentally, check up on their tax returns. Another story there as
Yes,
well.
that was a story in the Mail today, wasn't it? About maybe they haven't, they may have overlooked some tax that they are due to pay. What did you make of that one?
Well, I think this is they're saying down to a bit of a problem. But back in May, Archwell, the charitable foundation, kind of was stopped from accepting any more donations and so on. And eventually it was decided that this was due to a cheque that hadn't been successfully added into the return. You know, I'm not an accountant, and in fact, I often wish I was when I get my bank account to look at.
Yes.
But it seems to me the world now waits for the next tax returns to see if some, I think it's 4 million or more in donations that don't appear in this return, actually rock up next. Never mind Prince Harry. Harry Potter might be needed here with a wave of his wand.
Oh, indeed. Thank you very much, Caroline. That's a very frisky conversation about the Royals. That's probably the hottest conversation I've had. Thank you very much. That's Caroline Aston, Royal commentator there, getting all hot and bothered about polo. Well, why not? It's a Sunday afternoon. I'm Dawn Newsom. This is GB News. And there's plenty more coming up on today's packed show. I'll be asking my panel, who are still here with me, to whether they would buy that Boris Johnson book and what bits they're looking forward to reading. But first we do that, let's go and get the news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Good afternoon. It's 2:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie in the GB newsroom. The Conservative Party conference begins in Birmingham today, as the conference chair, Michael Winstanley, is expected to say he is profoundly sorry for the loss at the general election. Leadership hopefuls James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch will be making their case to be the next leader of the party. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his wife Akshata Murthy arrived last night but are expected to leave later on today. It will be his last conference as leader. David Lammy has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut. The Foreign Secretary says they agreed that an immediate ceasefire is required to bring an end to the bloodshed. It comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in an airstrike in southern Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel settled the score with Nasrallah's death. Canterbury MP Rosie Duffield has resigned the Labour whip, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy and pursuing cruel and unnecessary policies. In a resignation letter, Miss Duffield attacked Sir Keir Starmer's decision to keep the two-child benefit cap and means test winter fuel payments and condemned his handling of the outcry over gifts given to him and other senior Labour figures. Almost 10 million households have been warned that they risk overpaying for their energy if they don't send meter readings to their supplier before the price rise takes effect on the 1st of October. The average household energy bill is set to increase by £149 a year from this Tuesday as Ofgem increases its price cap. And finally, SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back 2 astronauts who have been stranded on the International Space Station.
3, 2, 1, ignition, engine full power, and liftoff.
The Dragon capsule, which has 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, lifted off from Cape Canaveral last night. The pair were only meant to be in space for about 8 days, but after a fault was found on their return vehicle, the Boeing Starliner, it returned to Earth empty as a precaution, leaving them stranded for almost 4 months. The new team hope to bring them back in February of next year. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. Well, that's it from me today, but Sophia Wensley will be with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. We have an east-west split in the weather today, dry in the east, but turning increasingly unsettled from the west with heavy spells of rain. This is all to do with this area of low pressure, and there's a squeeze in the isobars as well, indicating some strong and gusty winds. But through the rest of the afternoon, especially across Scotland and eastern areas in England, staying dry with some hazy sunshine, but further towards the west, turning increasingly unsettled, heavy spells of rain moving through, and also some strong winds, and there is a wind warning in force for gusts up to 50 to 60 miles per hour. Otherwise, temperatures feeling pleasant in the sunshine further towards the north, highs of 15 degrees here. As we go through Sunday evening, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled once again from the west, but across parts of Scotland, staying largely dry with some early evening sunshine. Across Northern Ireland, that low pressure system still making an influence, so heavy spells of rain are going to be pushing through. And as we go through Sunday evening, that cloud and rain is going to continue to push its way eastwards, and we do also have a Met Office rain warning that comes into force across southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions, but also possible further flooding on its way. Now that cloud and rain continues to push its way eastwards, many places across Wales and southern parts of England seeing outbreaks of rain to start Monday morning, but generally a mild start with temperatures around 10 or 11 degrees. So a damp start to the new working week with heavy spells of rain, especially across northern parts of Wales into the Midlands and towards the east of East Anglia as well. Towards the south, it will turn a little bit drier. We may see some brightness, and further towards the north of Scotland, we may hold on to a bit of sunshine, but otherwise still staying breezy in the south, highs of 17 degrees.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I honestly, this is the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. You're watching GB News, and I've got the most brilliant panel with me, JJ Anisiobi and Charlie Rowley. But enough about this show. Nana, a queer show, is coming up at 3 o'clock, and she's got an even better show coming up. So, Nana, what have you got for us?
Well, OK, so today, as we know, it's the Tory party conference. It's their first day, and there's a line of 4 hopefuls who would probably like to lead the party. So we're going to ask you which one you think should lead, or perhaps it's none of the above, or, as you were talking earlier, a lot of people don't even care. My niggle is about Rosie Duffield. Now, Rosie Duffield was part of the Labour Party. She has decided to leave, and one of the words she uses as her reasoning is avarice. Avarice, a word I haven't heard in many, many years. I think the last time I heard that word or read that word was in the Bible. And it's a really serious moment, but there are many commentators like James O'Brien on LBC and Carol Vorderman and people like that who are now eating their words. So we'll be talking about that as well. That is in my monologue later. Plus, you've seen him on the channel a lot. Andrew Eborn. What do you know about him? He will be my big interview. Find out. He's got quite an interesting story to tell. That is coming up.
Brilliant. That's Nana's show coming up at 3 o'clock for you. It sounds like you don't want to miss it, do you? Loving the Rosie Duffield stuff. So stay tuned for Nana at 3 o'clock. Thank you, Nana. Right, now, OK, we're going to go back to Boris Johnson because we've heard from the royal correspondent... she was getting a bit flushed, wasn't she, about Boris's memoirs of working with the Queen. But he also has a lot of other stuff to say. He's revealed details, as I said, from the Queen, and he's also talked about Harry and loads of stuff. Anyway, the book, Unleashed, is going to hit the shelves on the 10th of October. But will you be reading it, or is it just another political memoir? Well, JJ and Charlie are still with me, thankfully. JJ, you were sort of looking a bit... You haven't got it on order, have you? I'm getting the impression.
I've not got it on order.
No.
If I'm honest...
Why?
I'm not a fan of Johnson, anyway. I used to work for the London Evening Standard when he was also working there. I found him to be lazy, disingenuous and not a man of his word. I think it's pretty distasteful and disgusting that he's revealed private and personal conversations with the Queen.
Oh, do you?
The etiquette, everyone knows the etiquette is not to reveal that. Whether it's Harry and Meghan revealing conversations with the Queen, whether it's a politician doing it, it's not the done thing.
Actually, that's a good point. Everyone was jumping all over Harry and Meghan when they were revealing stuff that they shouldn't have been revealing. But with Boris Johnson, it's like, well, this is Boris, isn't it?
Yeah, and we can't take his word for anything. I don't believe anything he says. The other day he claimed that he'd been asked to speak to Harry and have a man-to-man chat to keep him in the country. Then Buckingham Palace sources reveal they never asked him to do that. And then he says he was considering invading the Netherlands to take back our things.
Weird.
Again, were you Boris? Probably not, mate. He's just trying to sell a book. This is Boris Johnson trying to make more money by telling a lot of untruths.
Ooh, strong words. Charlie, have you got it on order?
Not on order, but I will read it.
Mm-hmm.
I am interested because I think he's such a figure that's been in our lives politically for such a long time, even when he was sort of the Mayor of London. I think it's actually worth reading to see what he says about it all. And I think, as your brilliant interview with Carolyn, I think it was.
Yes,
the
royal expert, yes.
And she called him a great wordsmith, which he absolutely is. Because I think there's always a colour in the stories that he talks about. So when it comes to the Netherlands, I would never call it an invasion, but I do believe there was a genuine conversation around going to just retrieve the vaccines because they were UK vaccines.
Do you think he was just making a joke about it and it's...
The trouble with Boris is that he is such a wordsmith. He would walk through the corridors, even when it was sort of, when we were talking about Brexit and getting a deal or no deal. I mean, the whole civil service wanted a deal. Obviously, they wanted a deal for the country. They thought that would be great for diplomatic and international relations going forward. But he'd walk down the corridor saying, no deal, we're going for no deal. And everybody would be on tenterhooks because everybody thought, my God, this is the Prime Minister that would actually say no deal if it wasn't good enough. So they were petrified in that way. So if he did the same as he would in any other areas, he said, right, we're going to invade. I'm going to get those vaccines, come hell or high water, we're going in, let's call in the military chiefs. He might be having a good time about all of it because he might find it a bit fun as well as everything else. But everyone else would be on their tenterhooks to think, right, to prevent this happening, we've got to really pull out all the stops to retrieve those vaccines, which I think we ended up doing.
Well, that's not responsible leadership, is it?
It kicked the system into...
It made all his staff be on tenterhooks thinking, is this madman going to cause an international diplomatic disaster? Probably yes. You say he's a great wordsmith. He is. You know who else is a great wordsmith? Any kind of con man. That's all Boris Johnson is. He's a con man. He's literally trying to sell you his book. So he's telling all these stories so people can buy his book and make him more money. He's just a salesman.
Kind of how it works when you're promoting a book, to be fair to Boris Johnson.
But then promote it with truth, with truth.
But what about this one? This is the front page of the Mail on Sunday today. Boris, I am now convinced that COVID was made in a Chinese lab and I'm not sure whether lockdowns worked. What do we make to that one?
Well, that's obvious. That's obvious. Donald Trump was calling it the Chinese disease, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. We know it came from China. We're pretty sure it didn't just come from a bat. The world generally thinks it was created by the Chinese government in a lab. That's obvious. And lockdowns didn't work. Of course they didn't work. This is Boris Johnson selling you something you already know. Guess what? Next news, water is wet. Fantastic, Boris. You're a genius. Ridiculous.
Why don't you get off the fence and say what you really think?
This is what the used to are just so dull when it comes to opinion, honestly.
You're doing a disservice to these viewers this afternoon. I mean, look, the trouble with what he always wants to be popular, and he wants to be on the side, I think, of public opinion. And I think, look, I'm a little bit sort of, with those private conversations with the Queen, we've seen clips of her sort of in classrooms, and she's given the odd sort of, the Royal Variety performance, and she has a little conversation with everyone, and there's always a funny kind of moment. When he revealed, I think you said earlier on about her saying, don't have any sort of hang-ups, basically.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Bad feeling.
No, I think that's quite a nice thing to know, actually, that she said that to him on the back of him being ousted, because if that was her view of life, I think that was actually a really nice thing to
It's a warm thing to reveal?
Yes. So I don't take any umbrage with that, even though the tradition is not to reveal those kinds of conversations. But in terms of COVID, I mean, we locked down too late, and that was obviously something that he didn't want to do in the first place, but we ended up locking down too late. I think the first lockdown, I think we can broadly all accept, was probably the right thing to do, but it's the opening up, the unlocking, the locking down, the unlocking again in quick order because we didn't have enough vaccines, or we didn't have enough, whatever it was, in the Christmas time. We hadn't accounted for many more people with the virus. Therefore, Prime Minister, you've got to lock down just before Christmas and steal Christmas away. I mean, it caused more harm than it did in the long term. But he's now obviously having to make those decisions, I think, recognise where public support...
We were running out of time. JJ, mate, I shut you up last time, so go on, I'm going to let you make your point. Go on.
I would like to see in the book from Boris Johnson about the PPE and how his cronyism worked and who was allowed to get these contracts and where are those millions of pounds of contracts now. Tell us the truth about that, Boris. I bet that won't be in there.
Well, read it and find out.
That's a really good point, actually.
Well, I can tell you all about it. I mean, if you want to know. But
I'd love to know how you decided on which rich people should be getting even richer.
Can you do it in 2 seconds?
Well, there was an
cronyism.
I don't believe it. There was an 8-stage process that everybody went. Now, where people said that they were going to provide PPE and they didn't, then they've frauded us all. They frauded the taxpayer. These people should be put in jail. But I think when you're dealing with such a pandemic and people come forward to say, I think I can help, you take people...
And it was all Tory mates. It was all Tory donors, only Tory friends. Bit suspicious, if you ask me, but I'm sure honest Boris Johnson will tell us the truth in the book.
Well,
out soon.
I'll lend you my copy. In fact, it could be a signed copy.
And then we'll all wait with bated breath for Keir Starmer's book, which will obviously be along similar lines, won't it?
Blank pages.
I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. There's loads more coming up on today's show, including more of these two. But, oh, God, storm and flood warnings have been issued across the UK as we're set to be hit with a 200-mile wall of rain. Oh, make it stop, please. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Get your bodies ready, but don't go too far. We're back very soon.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Michael Sheen talks about how he was wearing false teeth and wigs and whatever else to play this part. How's it gone down over that side of the pond?
I mean, I have to tell you, I absolutely loved it. I'm seeing everybody else there. They think it's a hoot, but Ben and Anne, it is very funny. And you walk away from it thinking that was great television. But is that appropriate when you think about the fact that it's associated with Jeffrey Epstein? You know, after it was over, I thought, I'm going to say good things about this. But the further I get away from it, the more I think, but what about these women that were violated by Jeffrey Epstein when they turned on the television? Were they laughing? Did they see the humor in it? Or are they horrified that it's become a joke?
The dialogue seemed very stilted and expositional, I thought. But then you think, well, that's clearly what they were trying to achieve. And it wasn't a documentary, it was a drama. And some bits were clearly made up.
Absolutely. I mean, when you watch the the princesses crying when you watch the princesses making decisions behind the scenes. It's very compelling television, and you have to remind yourself, similar to The Crown, that you are watching something based on a true story but has been greatly exaggerated for entertainment value. And I initially thought, oh, this is horrible for Prince Andrew, and it is.
It is.
But at the same time, I think that sometimes these pieces make the royal family a little bit more relevant. They introduce people, they introduce new people, and people are now watching them a little more closely. And I think it's a double-edged sword. It can be both things. It can be bad. It can be good for the royal family.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh my God, we're coming to the end of our time together. I'm so sorry, it's gone so fast. This is The Weekend, I'm Dawn Neeson, and the panel are JJ Anisiobi and Charlie Rowley. They've been here all day. Where have you been? They're wonderful. Right, OK, now what isn't so wonderful is the blooming weather. The Met Office has issued another round of weather alerts as heavy rain and flooding ravages the UK. Oh, a 200 mile of rain. Who writes this? And 60 mile per hour winds are set to hit Britain. The Weather Service has alerted that, oh, look, you're all going to die if you go out in any case. So let's find out what the hell's going on. Weather journalist Nathan Rao joins us now. Nathan, hello. Nathan, 200 mile... Hello? You're going to cheer me up? You're not, are you?
Well, Dawn, as you know, wild horses wouldn't usually stop me from coming into the studio and spending an afternoon with you talking about the weather, but it is so foul out there that even you can't entice me in this afternoon. And it's going to stay foul. As you mentioned, there's wind and there's rain. There are wind warnings down the west of the country and rain warnings, and there are more wind warnings moving across to the east of the country, and then rain moves across to the east of the country. We've already seen extensive flooding, particularly in central, southern and eastern England through the week. And other than a brief respite in the middle of the week, there is more rain on the way, which unfortunately means more flooding. And in terms of that 200-mile wall of rain you were mentioning, I'm not sure about that. But certainly some very, very wet and windy weather to come, Dawn, so keep your brollies handy.
Wait, and Nathan, by the way, you only live 5 miles away. I mean, you could have made it into the studio, just pointing that out. But, however, I get that you don't want to risk life and limb. Is this unusual for this time of year, or are we normally under 10 foot of water everywhere?
We are, after all, in autumn. The autumn equinox was on the 21st of September, so we are in autumn and we are in storm season. Now, the year we've just come out of, we had 12 named storms, which was unusual, and we seem to be experiencing a lot of very heavy rain and stormy weather at the beginning of the storm season. Now, if you cast your mind back a few years, you'll remember that in 2014, Christmas, we were under feet of floodwater during the winter floods. And in 2012, we had flooding during the summer. We're experiencing a lot of very, very heavy rain and flooding. But unfortunately, it seems to be coming at the beginning of the season. So if this carries on through September, October, November, December, we could be looking at a situation of floods through the winter. And yeah, that would be unusual. We've already had twice the amount of rainfall than is the September average in parts of the country. And so in terms of that, yes, this is pretty unusual. But, you know, we are the UK, and pretty much most of the year, we're always looking for the best bits and getting the worst.
Nathan, I'll let you get back to making that arc. Obviously, it sounds like we're going to need it. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, that's it. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for your company this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Sorry I didn't have time to read any messages out. Thank you to my brilliant panel of JJ and Charlie. I've been Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. Nana's up next. Thank you for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. But let's have a look at the weather again, where you are, with Catherine Chalk. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. We have an east-west split in the weather today, dry in the east, but turning increasingly unsettled from the west with heavy spells of rain. This is all to do with this area of low pressure, and there's a squeeze in the isobars as well, indicating some strong and gusty winds. But through the rest of the afternoon, especially across Scotland and eastern areas in England, staying dry with some hazy sunshine, but further towards the west, turning increasingly unsettled, heavy spells of rain moving through, and also some strong winds, and there is a wind warning in force for gusts up to 50 to 60 miles per hour. Otherwise, temperatures feeling pleasant in the sunshine further towards the north, highs of 15 degrees here. As we go through Sunday evening, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled once again from the west, but across parts of Scotland, staying largely dry with some early evening sunshine. Across Northern Ireland, that low pressure system still making an influence, so heavy spells of rain are going to be pushing through. And as we go through Sunday evening, that cloud and rain is going to continue to push its way eastwards, and we do also have a Met Office rain warning that comes into force across southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions, but also possible further flooding on its way. Now, that cloud and rain continues to push its way eastwards, many places across Wales and southern parts of England seeing outbreaks of rain to start Monday morning, but generally a milder start with temperatures around 10 or 11 degrees. So a damp start to the new working week with heavy spells of rain, especially across northern parts of Wales into the Midlands and towards the east of East Anglia as well. Towards the south, it will turn a little bit drier. We may see some brightness, and further towards the north of Scotland, we may hold on to a bit of sunshine, but otherwise still staying breezy in the south, highs of 17 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters.